Other Utah Laws, Chapter 2. Water Rights. In this chapter, we will explain how water rights work in Utah. We will give a brief overview of how water rights are established, maintained, transferred, and recorded. Water is real property. The first principle to understand regarding water rights is the fact that water rights are considered real property. In another course, we will discuss the difference between real and personal property. Personal property is something like a car or a piece of furniture. Raw ground, houses, and water rights are examples of real property. If you own a water right, you do not own the actual water. As the title implies, you own the right to use the water. The right to use the water may be sold just as ground or a house is sold. The right to use water may be extremely valuable. Let's review an example. Let's assume you own a piece of raw ground. You would like to subdivide and develop as a residential subdivision. You know if you are able to sell individual lots, your property is worth substantially more than its current value. As you engage in the development process, the city in which the property is located informs you that the city does not have sufficient water resources to sustain the number of homes you plan to build on the property. Without water, you will be unable to sell any lots on which individuals will want to build a home. Without access to water, your property's value may be adversely affected. You will be limited to using the property in a way that does not require water. Water rights can be extremely valuable. In Utah, water rights are separate from the ground that the rights may be benefiting. Let's use a farm as an example. A farmer owns a large farm and owns water rights which allow him to use water to irrigate his farm. He wishes to sell his farm. Does the buyer also get the water rights? The buyer of the farm does not automatically receive the water rights with the purchase of the farm. The water rights are considered separate real property from the ground itself. The purchaser of the farm would need to negotiate for and purchase the water rights separately from the actual farm ground. Let's assume the buyer of the farm does successfully negotiate the purchase of both the farm ground and the water rights the farmer has been using to irrigate the farm. When the transaction closes, two separate deeds will be recorded. One deed will be recorded transferring ownership of the farm ground to the new buyer. The other deed will be recorded transferring ownership of the water rights to the new buyer. Please note, it is not necessary for both the water rights and the ground to transfer simultaneously or even transfer to the same party. The farmer could have elected to sell only the ground and retain the water rights. The farmer could have sold the ground to one party and the water rights to another party. Remember, water rights are considered real property just like a piece of ground is considered real property. Some real estate agents and some attorneys specialize in marketing, buying, and selling of water rights. As water becomes more and more scarce, the rights to use the water becomes increasingly valuable. As you can imagine, if a property owner is unable to obtain water rights for their property, the potential uses for the ground are limited. We mentioned a deed would be recorded if the water rights were to be transferred. Ownership records for water rights are maintained by the county recorder's office for the county in which the water rights are located. The county recorder also maintains the ownership records for all ground within the respective county. Methods of appropriating water. Historically, two methods of theories have been used to determine who owns what water rights. 1. Riparian. 2. Prior appropriation. Utah uses prior appropriation, but we will explain both methods. Riparian refers to the banks or edges of a body of water. When using the riparian doctrine to allocate water, landowners along a body of water have an absolute right to use the body of water bordering on their ground. This method is popular in the eastern United States. The following illustration shows three property owners near a river. Only two of the property owners have their properties contiguous or adjoined to the river. The third property owner is not contiguous to the river at all. Therefore, only the two property owners whose property adjoin or touch the river have riparian water rights. The third, although they're near the river, are not adjoined to the river, and therefore they do not have riparian water rights. As we mentioned previously, Utah uses prior appropriation to determine who owns the right to use water. Prior appropriation basically says that whoever is first to establish a beneficial use of a source of water has a right to continue the use of the water, as long as they use it for a beneficial use. The date one begins using the water is considered the priority date. Earlier priority dates trump users with later priority dates. This method of allocating water began in the 1840s when Utah pioneers began establishing irrigation systems to irrigate the Utah desert.